Are you wondering which food is best for running or what foods will make you a faster runner? Welcome to the Healthy Runner podcast, where we help you get stronger, run faster, and enjoy lifelong injury-free running. In this episode, Coach Brooke, registered dietitian, nutritionist from Intentful Nutrition and our Spark Healthy Runner coaching team, is going to provide valuable, need-to-know information when it comes to our nutrition as runners. We are going to cover: why do most runners not eat enough? How can fueling help running? Which food is best for running? What should I eat on an easy run day or rest day? What should I eat on a moderate training running day? What should you eat on hard training days or race days? And then what foods make you a faster runner? So, Brooke, thank you so much for coming back on the show to share all your knowledge on this topic that I know you are very passionate about.
Of course. I'm so happy to be here. And as always, it's a pleasure to be talking with all of you again today.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, Brooke Czarnecki is a registered dietitian, nutritionist. She's a runner. She is also the nutrition expert on our Spark Healthy Runner team. Brooke is passionate about helping runners prevent underfueling by learning to effectively fuel their bodies for all of life's adventures. So, Brooke, you know how we do this. I think most, hopefully, have heard you before. So they kind of know a little bit of your background, but what's going on in your life and in kind of your part of the world in Alaska these days.
Gosh, yeah, there's so much going on. So, still, doing my virtual practice with my runners and with my athletes. And we're personal life wise, we're in the middle of a move. So, we're a military family. We're going to be en route to Missouri here in the next couple of weeks and starting our family too. I'm 20, like almost 20 weeks pregnant.
Yes.
So it's like lots of new things in my life. Very exciting, also very scary, but all good things and lots of new adventures coming for our fam. So
Absolutely. We are super excited for you. Very, very exciting time in your life. Yeah, take in every moment. I think all of us who are kind of on the other side of having young kids can agree. Those times seemed chaotic when we were going through them, but at the same token, we do miss some of those times and just everything being new and being new parents and the move, like living in a different area. So all the Missouri runners are going to have to hit you up once you make your move and make some connections
yeah,
in Missouri.
absolutely. I know we're like really going to be in the middle of nowhere, but I am excited to like explore the cities when we are able to get out. So
Nice, nice. So, yeah, let's get into this topic that we're really wanted to educate our running community about today. What is your belief about, or why do you think, most runners are not eating enough?
yeah, I think there's a couple reasons and a couple theories that I have. The first one is that we are taught our whole lives just how to diet. We're not taught how to effectively fuel our bodies for running or keeping our body active, keeping our body strong. We're taught how to shrink our body and how to restrict our food, how to constantly push off our hunger or even question our hunger. So that's my first theory, is just that we really aren't taught like proper nutrition, and no fault of anybody. Like that's just how a lot of us grew up. We've grown up in this like diet culture era. And then my second theory is a common theme that I find with runners is a a major focus on clean eating. And clean eating is basically like, consuming mostly unprocessed foods, whole foods, trying to stay away from white foods, quote unquote. And what this leads to is eating a lot of fibrous foods. So foods that are really high in fiber. And that fiber fills us up so much that we're filled up on fiber and not filled up on energy or calories. And so runners think that like, oh, I'm eating enough because I'm feeling so full all the time. But eating too much fiber can lead to like gastrointestinal issues, that feeling of fullness all the time. And then that's leading to under eating. So the clean eating trend gets taken too far a lot of times with runners, with athletes, and it's not uncommon for me to tell athletes, like, you need to eat less vegetables, less fruits. We need to eat more carbs. So that's another theory that I have with runners as well, is just that, like, the high fiber diet and the emphasis on clean eating when it's not really necessary. Like, of course, eating whole foods is important, but it doesn't need to be all of our diet.
Right. And yeah, I can definitely see that. And that I've definitely been there before as well. And we can get too much of a good thing.
Totally.
Right. So kind of moderation. And I got my carbs give me spark shirt on for today's chat. As you bring up carbs, I always figure I gotta represent with promoting the message that carbs do give us spark and they're not
Yes.
bad,
Yes.
and they don't need to be avoided. But I do agree on all fronts that a lot of the runners that we work with are usually not eating enough, and I do think that's a big reason is the whole diet culture thing. So that's why I just love what you do in sharing your message, like on Instagram, in that food is your friend. Food is not something that needs to be looked at in a negative light. And this is the first time I've heard you kind of mention that also about like clean eating. And we don't need to be like 100% clean eating, and
Yes.
that's okay. So it's nice to hear that from a registered dietitian, and just to be reminded of that. I think it's super helpful. So how why are we even talking about this today? Like every time you come on the show, I do notice that a lot of runners listen in, and we want to learn about nutrition. We want to learn about food, fueling. Like, how can fueling help our running? Like, why is it important, or how can, the food that we eat help to fuel our runs?
Yeah, so important. And most importantly, gosh, I don't even know where to start with this one, but there's just so many different cascades that happen when our body's not getting enough fuel. And so the opposite happens when we get enough fuel. And so it's really important to eat enough, one, for just overall health. Like, sometimes we don't realize that every single system in our body is dependent on us feeding it adequately. So, if you're not eating enough food, systems like your hormone regulation system, your endocrine system, is one of the first things to go, essentially. I'm putting that in quotes, because it's not a necessary bodily process to keep your body alive. So your body starts to prioritize, like, what am I going to use this fuel for if I'm not getting enough? And a lot of times it goes to your heart, your liver, your kidneys. And the less important, I hate to even say less important, but what your body prioritizes is not the hormone regulation. So with that, for women specifically, we get loss of menstrual cycle. For men, we get low testosterone. There's just a cascade of effects that happen when our body is not getting enough fuel. And literally every single cell in your body is dependent on what you put in it. And most importantly, eating enough. When you're not eating enough, your cells aren't getting what they need to perform and even just live effectively, efficiently, optimally. So, we start to see things like chronic injuries or chronic fatigue, burnout with athletes. That happens, in a lot of different reasons, but, not eating enough, burnout is a huge one. So it's just really important to make sure that if you want to be a lifelong runner, you want to run forever, you've got to support that now. You've got to support your body now in that. And, that's why I'm so passionate about talking about eating adequately, because it's just like, I can't emphasize enough, like, how important that is. Your body is literally depending on it. Food is not optional.
Oh my goodness. And I guess that explains why those who are underfueling, not eating enough, or go like hours without eating, get that hangry, right?
Yes.
And it affects mood. You brought up how it affects, your endocrine system, hormones, all of that. And yeah, it's actually interesting to hear about, honestly, like low T. I know for men, right, like that's a concern as we start to age in our middle age years, but that is good to know that eating properly and getting the proper fuel will help perhaps decrease the significance as that decreases with a normal aging process. So that's definitely a good thing to learn. But it's our fuel. It's really what our body is breaking down that feeds all of our organs, like you said. So that makes sense as far as, and it's weird, right? Because when we grow up, it's like you eat food because it tastes good, or you only eat like what, you know, tastes good to you, and you think it's just something we do. Or a lot of times culturally, right, it's like you celebrate an event, you go out to dinner to celebrate, right?
Yes.
And I grew up in in a big Italian family, and it's kind of like, yeah, when the family gets together, like we eat, right? Like we know how to eat, we know how to throw down our carbs with our pasta. But it is interesting to just kind of look at food from a different lens, and just realize that what we are putting in our bodies is really affecting all of our other functions, from physical aspect, maybe mentally, like hormonally, endocrine system wise,
Yes.
all of that. So yeah, thank you
And
for bringing that up.
yeah,
And
I also want to mention too with runners, I deal with a lot of runners that have like gastrointestinal issues, so like stomach problems, abdominal pain. And a lot of times that can be linked back to under eating. Like the gut is so important when it comes to nutrition. And when we aren't giving our body enough fuel, we start to see things like food sensitivities, or, like a lot of bloating, a lot of cramping. And that's again when what leads to nurse to be like, oh, I need to cut out foods. And so that can like further perpetuate the problem. And so, the GI things are also something that's like, we don't think about how eating enough oftentimes really does it. I mean, it can solve all of your problems essentially. And I've seen that a lot where runners like, I had no idea that like my bloating was because I wasn't eating enough. So it's just all around, it's just so important for many different things. And also, you're just a nicer person when you're fed. The amount of times my clients are like, I can't believe that I like have all this patience, or I can't believe that, I just don't suddenly snap at people anymore. And it's like, because my body has enough energy to be content.
right.
So it really is, it's fascinating.
Yep. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense, and I'm sure is a lot more enjoyable for their spouses, children, their coworkers, right, who are dealing with them on a daily basis. So, which food is really best for running, or what types of food?
Yeah. I mean, I don't discriminate against any foods at all. And, foods are wonderful for runners. I do want to emphasize the importance of carbohydrates. I think this is always a theme in our chats together. But, you've got to be giving your body that primary fuel source, which is those carbohydrates. And a lot of my runners that come to me are afraid of eating too many carbohydrates, or they're afraid of weight gain because, they don't want to eat too many carbs because they're afraid it's going to lead to weight gain. And we really, again, it's really important to understand like why each food that you're eating is so important for running. And so I always emphasize carbs because I think they get a really bad rap, but you need those carbs in order for your body to be able to go out and have energy on your runs, and also have energy when you come home. So a lot of times that's the macronutrient, I guess, that I would say runners need more of than the general population.
Right. Okay. So let's do some kind of examples here.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you get these questions a lot on, how do I adjust my eating depending upon what I'm doing for training? So like what should, a runner eat on, let's say, an easy run day, or they're not even exercising that day. Like they have this rest and recovery day that maybe their coach told them is like super important to allow your body to grow, right? And be able to tolerate the training to stay healthy. And even though they don't want to rest, they have this rest day. So now they may be thinking, hey, if I'm resting, then I probably shouldn't eat as much, right? Do you get that a lot?
I get that all the time. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So what should we eat on those kind of, let's say, easy run day or a rest day?
Love that question. And it is probably one of the top questions that I get from my athletes, and even just on Instagram too. It's just general confusion about like, do I need to adjust my nutrition, or should I eat less? Do I need to eat, more calories on this day versus less calories on this day? And I typically don't recommend, like, I'm not a big fan of food tracking, but you don't need to necessarily eat less on those easier days or those rest days, but you need to be thinking about like eating more on the other days. So, for example, I like to use the athletes' plates examples, and these are directly from like Team USA, their nutrition team. They created these, and they're awesome. I use them with all of my clients, but essentially just teaches you like how to break up your plate. It's an example of how you might break up your plate based on different training days. So for an easy day, we'll start with that. And easy day is so relative. Like some people are like, oh, 6 miles is an easy day for me. Or, resting completely is an easy day for me. So you got to take these things with a grain of salt. Like this is generalized information. However, I will say if you're working out for like less than 30 minutes, low intensity, this would be considered what you'd eat on an easy day. So when you envision your plate, I want you to break it up and do half of your plate fruits and vegetables, a quarter of your plate protein, and a quarter of your plate carbohydrates. So we're still including all of the food groups in that easy day. We're just adjusting the ratios of your fruits and veggies, your carbs, and your protein. So that easy day, the half plate fruits and veggies, the quarter plate protein, and the quarter plate carbs is typically what I would recommend for somebody on a day where they're not doing heavy exercise.
Okay. All right. So everyone's visualizing that from the audio version of this. Half your plate, veggies. Now, this might be a dumb question. You tell me. Is
Never.
fruits involved in that, the veggie half of the plate, or no?
Yeah, I
What
include fruits and veggies
Okay.
on that side.
Fruits and
Yep.
veggies are half, and then we have a quarter protein, quarter carbs, and then I remember from your nutrition basics episode when we talked about our macronutrients. Where do the fats come in?
Usually the fats are, and I say this to my athletes a lot, like usually the fats are incorporated somewhere, somehow on that plate. So whether you're cooking your veggies in olive oil, or you're including, maybe a dressing, an olive oil based dressing on your salad, or, ranch dressing on your salad or something like that. Usually fats sneak their way into the plate, but I do try to be intentional too about like making sure that we're getting fats as well. So great question, but typically that's like they're sprinkled in somewhere.
Yeah. And even like, let's say you're doing in the protein portion, maybe some nuts, right? They have
Yep.
some healthy fats in there. Okay. All right. So that's kind of the easy day or rest day. And I like that you brought up that it's scalable, right? So this is your individual, you, the runner who's listening to this right now, what you consider as an easy day in your training for where you are right now in your training. So then what should, let's say, what should I eat on, let's say, a moderate training running day?
Yeah, so this is like, and I hate to even give times, but I do think it's easier to just visualize sometimes with timing. So if you're running between like 30 to 60 minutes and you have like maybe like a light yoga sesh or something, like that would be like a moderate day of training. So it's not like a workout, but it's also not like a full rest day. You basically want to split your plate into thirds. So you're increasing the carbohydrates and you're decreasing the vegetables a little bit. So you'll see throughout the explanation that the carbohydrate side is the one that's really increasing and the veggies are decreasing. And that's because we want to get all of those calories from carbohydrates that we need to fuel our body and not be fueled specifically just on vegetables, because veggies are wonderful, but because they're giving you all those micronutrients that we need, but they're not giving you caloric density. So we're not getting that energy from them. So splitting the moderate day into thirds is the best way to do it. And a lot of times I'll tell athletes, like, if you have an easy day and you're feeling extra hungry, don't limit yourself. Like add a little bit of extra carbohydrates on there because your body's asking for more fuel. And oftentimes I do hear that runners are more hungry on rest days because it's that chance for your body to catch up. So don't be afraid to like add more carbs if you feel like you need more carbohydrates that day.
Right. So we basically increased by the same proportions the amount of protein and the amount of carbohydrates that we're ingesting, and we've decreased the fruits and veggies kind of portion of our athlete's plate.
Totally. Totally.
Okay. All right. So then how about those hard training days and race days? So let's say, I don't know, someone's doing like interval training, they're doing like repeats on the track, or, they have a long run or they have a race. How does that shift in what we should be eating?
Yeah. So on these days, half your plate is going to be carbohydrates, a quarter of the plate is going to be protein, and a quarter of the plate is going to be your fruits and your veggies. So a lot of times when I say this, my athletes are like, I'm not doing that. I'm like, you can do it. I know you can do it. A half a plate of carbs is a little bit overwhelming, especially if you're not used to it. But I promise you, your body is going to thank you later because you have to think about this in terms of growth and recovery, right? Like your body is exerting more energy, you're exerting a lot of fluids, your body's like utilizing a lot of resources, so you need to replace those resources and in the form of carbohydrates. So half that plate carbohydrates, and when I say carbs, I'm meaning like your potatoes, your rices, your pastas, your breads, those kinds of things, not necessarily like your squash. Like squash is not super calorie dense, so I'd include that in a vegetable, which is a lot of athletes are like, well, can I, like include my starchy veggies as like half the plate carbs? And I'm like, no, rice, pastas, like those things, we need those things on our plate. So that's my recommendation for the hard days.
Yeah. So even, I guess, going along those lines, for the higher glycemic vegetables, like I think carrots are a little higher glycemic, like that doesn't count, right?
Right.
That
Yeah,
wouldn't
those
count
those
as
are
your.
veggies.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. All right. All right. So we're really kind of doubling down essentially on the carbs to give us some spark for those hard workouts, those hard sessions. And does it matter timing wise? Are we thinking of, okay, today I have a speed work day? In general, I want to think all of my three main meals that I'm having throughout the day should be divided in that fashion, proportion wise, or is it like after the workout, or is it before the workout? You know, if you can talk a little bit about timing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So generally, I do recommend like the day of incorporating more carbohydrates into your day. And for some people, I know like we're not always eating, like a perfectly like, okay, we have our vegetable here, our carb here, and our protein here. And so typically, I'll say like use this for your dinner meal because I think a lot of times that's what people's dinner plates look like. Not always, but generally, dinner reflects more of those athletes' plates. And so during the day, let's say, usually you have like a sandwich with a piece of fruit and I don't know, maybe like cheese sticks or something. What I might recommend is that you have your sandwich instead of the fruit, maybe you have some like pretzels or something to give you a little bit more carbohydrates along with the rest of your meal. So essentially, you're just sometimes substituting like more carbs into your day rather than like, again, those like high fiber foods, if that makes sense.
Right. No, that definitely does. And I've really never thought about it in that respect. Like I've always thought about like MVP, right? Think about like your meat, vegetable, potato.
Mhm.
So like your carbs, your protein, and your vegetable. But even thinking about it in this fashion and thinking about it in the context of eating like a runner, and how many times I see, people having salads for lunch, which I'm a big salad fan for lunch. I literally just finished mine before we hopped on this. But before really you started educating me, I would literally have that salad and I would always make sure I have protein. Like, hey,
Uh-huh.
I'm like all in protein guy, right? So I always make sure I have my grilled chicken, I have my turkey in my salad. But there were many, many years that I was not having any carbs at all with that salad. and I was training hard, and I was expecting to get like PRs at races. And now just like thinking back, and now I'm more mindful. So like I make sure like I just had couscous in that salad, or I
Yes.
am having actually a piece of bread. And like the bread's not going to kill me, guys. Like, having that piece of Italian bread, or having a roll with it, or having a small bag of chips with it, right? And that doesn't have all the added stuff in it, right? Have some natural potato chips, like they're made out of potatoes. And if you're running and sweating a lot, maybe you get a little
I love
salt,
that.
which will also help
Yeah.
you out. So just kind of changing the mindset around that, I know for me has been super helpful. And I also noticed that, because honestly, I always used to definitely get like that late afternoon crash and like the hangry feeling. And now, like reflecting and thinking about it, it's like, well, yeah, like I was never having carbs. Like, no wonder.
Yeah, I love that you brought up the salad example because that's a much better example to use for like easy day versus hard day. I would never recommend somebody have a salad like leading up to their hard day workout, or even if you're working out in the morning, like after that. Your body's just, it needs more than that. And there's been so many athletes that I looked, this one client I'm thinking of in particular, we actually met through the Healthy Runner streams, and she's working with me now. And she was having like 2 salads a day, and she was having a lot of gastrointestinal problems. Her fiber was like way too high. It was like 80 grams a day, which like the recommendation is like 30 grams a day, so like way too much fiber and just not enough calories. And so we started replacing that salad with a sandwich, and she's like, night and day difference, like less GI problems, more energy to like do her workouts, even just like be a present mom, be at work, and just all around. I mean, it just feels better for her. So that the salad is not always the best option. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah. And, for you guys who are listening, if you are an after work runner, think about that, right? Like, are you having a salad for lunch? Are you adequately fueling for that run or that workout, or you're hitting the gym after work? Then, some of the stuff that Brooke's talking about, and then even thinking about the GI distress, I know that's a common problem. So I want you guys to think about this in a little different way. Yeah, no, this is super, super helpful. And I guess I threw this question in there more for fun, because apparently a lot of people want to know. And I have a feeling I know what your answer is going to be, but, what foods make you a faster runner?
Yeah, I love this question. And I was thinking about it before our chat. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to answer this. But like obviously I'm going to say carbohydrates, but really the big idea, and I hope that this has been clear throughout the episode, is like before we focus on like the carbs, the proteins, the fats, we really have to make sure that we're eating enough overall calories. And so ultimately having enough fuel in your tank first is really what's going to make you a faster runner. And then we can start to focus on the things like, okay, is your carbohydrate, distribution adequate? Is your protein distribution adequate? Is your fat distribution adequate? So yeah, obviously the correct answer would be carbs. But yeah, there's a lot of different factors that go into it. And I always like to think about like on your long runs and stuff. If you're not having carbs, I mean, you're gonna tank eventually. So those carbohydrates really do give you that spark, and they give you the energy that you need as a runner.
Yeah, no, great way to answer that. And I just love, again, in, our quick fix society and our, 10-second attention spans with reels and TikToks. And, everyone wants that, you know, silver bullet that is going to make them a faster runner, or eat the one food that is going to make them a faster runner. And I hope you guys really, got from this episode is I think we need to reframe our mindset in how we look at food. And that's what I've learned most from Brooke, honestly, in these last couple of years. And even in just like a year, in how I look at food, where I used to view food as, yeah, now I'm trying to lean down, right? Summer's coming, and we love to go to the beach. So it's like, yeah, I want to feel comfortable in my own skin, right?
Totally.
And used to think about food in that way of like, there's clean eating, and then there's like winter hibernation eating, right?
Yes.
Where you just don't think about anything. You eat everything, you're eating seafood, just everything you see, you just put it in your mouth, right? Um, and and really looking at like the things that we eat and the food that we have as fuel for our bodies to enhance our running performance, but then also recovery. And hopefully, you guys kind of got that out of today's episode, and being a little more strategic about, you know, how do we change like the proportion of our athletes' plates. And I love your mindset about that, like no food is like a no-go, or not really looking at food as either good or bad, right? Or like punishment or reward, right? Because
Yeah.
I used to actually think that, Brooke, like in the beginning, it'd be like, oh, I did a long run today. Oh, I ran like, I was out there for an hour and a half. Well, now I can eat whatever I want today. And like, that doesn't even like cross my mind anymore. It's like, if
Yeah.
I'm hungrier, then I'm like, okay, I'm going to eat. And then I think to myself, why am I hungrier today? Oh, yeah, I had a really hard workout. Or, oh, yeah, I had a long run. So I'm hoping that your message, it's influenced me a lot. And I'm hoping that it's spreading to the more times that people hear it. Hopefully it's going to sink in a little bit more. But I know you did a fantastic job at putting together a little freebie for our listeners, kind of the PDF, the nutrition blueprint that all the runners are enjoying. You really went into like top 5 nutrition tips for runners, as well as the popular ultimate snack guide is very helpful for those that just want to have some options on how they fill out like this runner plate or athlete plate. So if you guys want to be able to get that freebie, download that, check it out in the show notes. We've gotten some really great feedback for it. And if you go to learn.sparkhealthyrunner.com, you'll definitely see our free ebooks. And that's the nutrition guide that Brooke put together. And I'm kind of curious, Brooke, how has it been going from your standpoint in working in our Healthy Runner coaching program as not only a registered dietitian nutritionist, but then also as a running coach?
Yeah, it's been so much fun. And like working with different athletes and just having it's different when you're working with somebody on like just nutrition. And then it's different when you're working with somebody with like nutrition plus running plan plus strength plan. It kind of has this like well-rounded approach, and you're able to see like improvements in all different areas. And so like one client that you have in particular, we we've been focusing on making sure that he's eating enough, making sure he's eating enough protein, and then being consistent with strength training, and just to see the difference in his running performance and just like how he's feeling. Like he said to me the other day, I usually at this point in training, I'm feeling really burned out because I like wasn't adequately feeling my body, or I wasn't, consistently strength training. And I actually feel really strong. And like that is so validating, not only for him, but also for me as a coach, to be like, this works. Like this actually is, we always preach like what we should do, right? And then when it's actually like applied and you see it in practice, it's just really cool to see the full circle be completed, and you're not like in that burnout cycle where you're like, okay, I'm going to start a training plan, and then I'm going to get burned out, and then I have to take a couple months off, and it just starts again. Like it's more sustainable, and you can be more consistent with your training. So that's really cool to see.
Oh my goodness. Like even just reflecting at what I did on my personal nutrition, like that used to be me when I first started running in my adult onset running journey. Of I was the same way. I would train for a half marathon and be like so burnt out, where I had to go into this like deload phase,
Yep.
and I couldn't even train because I was mentally, physically like burnt out because I thought it was so hard, like the training aspect. So that is great to hear. And I think I can definitely relate to how you're feeling right now, because that's how I felt in the beginning when, I went from in the clinic physical therapist to now being a run coach who helps runners get over their stubborn injuries. But being able to blend those other elements that we didn't technically have quote unquote control over or insight, or add like, a structured plan that complements like
Yeah.
what we do from our expertise standpoint, whether it's like running injuries or it is, nutrition. Yeah, just like making it more holistic is super, super helpful. And I think really just is what runners deserve. And so thank you for providing that, service for our community. And if you're listening to this and you're really looking for like an individualized nutrition plan and you want to prevent underfueling, we talked about that as a common, sticking point or problem that many runners face. And you just want to run that half marathon, or you want to run that marathon without hitting the wall or actually feeling good and not being burnt out after your training, you can learn how you can work with Coach Brooke within our one-on-one signature Healthy Runner coaching program by going to learn.sparkhealthyrunner.com/coaching. This has been super informative as always. It's always such a pleasure to catch up, and I continually learn from you. So I thank you for that, as you're making me a healthier runner as I go in my journey. But thanks for coming on to educate our community as well.
Thank you so much for having me again, Duane. Always a pleasure, and I always have lots of fun.
Yes, yes. And thank you guys for tuning in to this episode, whether you're listening on a run. Hopefully you're having a fantastic run, and hopefully you fueled prior to your run. Or if you're watching this video in our Spark Healthy Runner YouTube channel, I appreciate all of you guys. And if you like this training, then you'll surely like the next. If you're listening on the podcast, queue up episode 153 to learn all about kicking cravings with balanced nutrition from Brooke, or just click the video that I have for you next. Let's maintain a strong mind, a strong body, and let's just keep on running. Until next time.